So welcome everyone. My name is Reverend Jeff Doucette and I am the United Church Minister here at Enniskillen Tyrone United Church. And I welcome you all here this evening as we gather to share an evening listening to Reverend Deb Anderson-Pratt and her story of being part of the residential school system. And so as we begin, let's take a moment and acknowledge our territorial lands. We acknowledge that the Creator entrusted the land on which we gather this night, the First Nations peoples of the Huron-Wendat and Anishinaabe and Treaty 4 and all of the other Indigenous communities that you are a part of who are gathered this night. May we strive to open our hearts, minds, and spaces to make right with all our relations. May it be so. So, Reverend Deb, it is an honor to have you here this night. And as we begin, I offer you this tobacco from us gathering here and ask if you are willing to honor us by sharing your story this evening, that we may learn and listen to you with great respect.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I'm gonna lighten a smudge.
Okay.
The smudge is traditional healing thingamadoo we use. It's healing for anything really, for the spirit mostly. And I'm gonna need it, is why I'm lighting it. So I use sage when I smudge, and I'm smudging you all. And I'm gonna smudge myself in the way that I traditionally smudge. Creator, I ask you to bless me this evening. I ask you to bless my eyes that I may see your beauty. Bless my ears that I may hear your word. Bless my nose that I may smell the beauty in this world. Bless my mouth that I speak good words. Bless my throat that my voice may be heard. Bless my heart that you are in it at all times. And bless my body as I do your work. Aho. And I'll just let it burn out. Thank you.
Thank you. So the very first part of our time this evening, we have Reverend Deb's story, which she asked us if we would use what was presented by her to St. James United Church in Regina on the 20th of June. And so we will play that. Lisa Norman is going to set that up for us. And then after, we will take a little bit of time with some question and answers that you might have for Reverend Deb. But we just ask that this be as safe a space as possible this evening, and to allow her story to be received by us with open ears and open hearts. And so, are we all set? Reverend Deb, can we start your talk?
Yeah.
Great.
I'll let you know when you can cut it off.
What's that?
I'll let you know when you can cut it off.
Okay.
Okay.
And we're going to start by Reverend Deb is going to read the piece of scripture, which was very powerful, that preceded her sharing her story. And so I invite you to turn off your video if you're able to, which will increase our bandwidth, except
Did you want me to start this now or not?
Yeah.
Okay.
3 to 7. I am grateful to God, whom I worship with a clear conscience, as my ancestor did. When I remember you constantly in my prayers day and night, recalling your tears, I long to see you so that I may be filled with joy. I am reminded of your sincere faith, a faith that lived first in your grandmother Lois and your mother Eunice, and now I'm sure lives in you. For this reason, I remind you to rekindle the gift of God that is within you through the laying on of my hands. For God did not give us a spirit of cowardice, but rather a spirit of power and of love and of self-discipline. Wow, you should pick an awesome, that goes so well with my story.
The way you whisper.
My name is Deb Anderson-Pratt. I was named Deborah, as in the Bible, Mary Rose Cuisance. I since changed it to Deb officially because I don't like the name Deborah. And I detest the name Debbie. Please don't ever call me Debbie. It's too much reminder of residential school for me. I used to hate that little girl, but I've learned to love her, but I still don't like the name. So, Deb, you want to talk to me? I come from a 5 generation of a family that attended residential school. I am not going to say we are survivors or that we were victims of the residential school. I prefer to refer to it as we were casualties of the residential school. Because in essence, the residential school was a war against our people to extenuate us. And today, we still fight that battle. Each one of us that attended the residential school. We're forever told to get over it. Imagine yourselves as a part of that time. Your children, your grandparents, your parents. You don't get over it. If your mind tends to forget it, your body reminds you. There have been many times I've lain in bed and experienced my body remember what happened to me. So don't ever tell me to forget about it or get over it, because I just might haul off and punch you. So the first person that ever attended residential school is my great grandmother, Mary Jane Anderson. Rose. She was 4 years old when she was taken to the residential school prior to being taken from her community by police and ministers, priests. She was raised by her grandmother in the traditional manner of medicine to become a medicine woman.
Jeff, I can do this without the video. The video is not very good quality.
Whatever letters she got and had to write them for her. She was a very powerful woman. She walks with me today. I walk in her footsteps. She struggled. She was sent home at 16, married off to my papa. So she never ever saw her home again. She was from the Peguis First Nation, not where it is today, but where it was by Selkirk, and then they got moved. So she never ever went home to her community. She went straight to George Gordon First Nation with my papa. She was 16 years old when she was married off by the priests and the nuns. And she died victoriously at the ripe old age of 87. She died speaking her language. She died doing her medicine woman healing. So they couldn't break her.
I'll leave it to you, Deb, if you want to do it or let it go.
Honoring her traditional teaching.
Yeah, I can just do it. The video is not very good quality.
Okay.
She was the matriarch in my home growing up. My mom and dad didn't have any say. She was.
Okay, we're going to stop it and
Yeah.
And she allowed.
Well,
Okay.
I'm trying to stop it, Jeff. Hold on.
And preach and the worst one that scared me was the born again
Okay,
Christians.
just a second here.
And
There, okay,
Okay.
there.
You want to put me full screen there?
that's
Lisa?
what I'm
Okay.
going to try and do here.
You're gonna do that, Jeff, okay.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Okay, you're not gonna have pictures this time. But anyway. My name is Deb Mary Rose Anderson-Pratt. I was born and raised as Deborah, as in the Bible. Mary Rose Cusance. I have since changed my name to Deb. I don't like the name Deborah, and I don't like the name Debbie. Debbie is too much of a reminder of residential school for me. And so about 5 years ago, I changed my name to just Deb. And I've been married 3 times, but I didn't want to honor any of my ex-husband's names, so I took my mother's maiden name and my dad's last name. My mother was Anderson, my dad was Pratt. So I combined them to make my name Deb Anderson-Pratt. I'm a 5-generation residential school survivor. I hate that name, that word survivor. I prefer I am a residential school casualty. Casualty of war, because that's what the residential school was to our people. Intended to wipe us out. Intended to take the Indian out of the child. So the first person that went to residential school was my great-grandmother, as you've seen on the picture. Her name was Mary Jane Rose before she went to the school. She was raised by her, well, I think her mom and dad lived with her, but that's how we were. Our grandparents lived with us. My great-grandmother lived with us. She was the matriarch in our home. And but she was taught by her grandmother in the traditional manner of medicine, of being a medicine woman, a healer, until she was 4, when the missionaries and the police came and took her from her community and put her in the industrial school at that time, they were called. She shared with us while she was there that in the mornings they had teachings. And I don't think it was reading and writing or math or anything like that, because she couldn't read or write. My older sisters used to read her letters that she got and wrote any letters that she needed written. So they were pretty much trained in the Christian manner in the mornings. And in the afternoons, they had to clean the school. The girls cleaned inside, did the laundry, did the dishes, washed the floor, changed the beddings, whatever housework. Pretty much they were trained for housework. The boys were trained outside. They had to do the gardening, any yard work that needed being done. And so, yeah, she shared that with us. And she drove those into us too. I didn't have any like for God because of her teachings of the Christian that and the ministers that came to our home, because they taught cruel, punishing God, and I didn't want to have anything to do with him. She also continued with her her medicine woman work, medicine healing. She never shared anything else really of what happened there other than her morning and her afternoon duties there. She left that school when she was 16, and the nuns and the priests married her off to Papa David. And so she never got to see her home community. I don't know if she ever went home to visit. I know she still had family there because we just went and meet them about 3 years ago. But so she moved straight to George Gordon First Nation with Papa and started her family. She had a son and a daughter. And when I say she was a very powerful woman, I mean, like, she was invalid, so to speak, I guess. She always sat in her bed in the living room and commanded our home and pretty much commanded our whole community. Like, she could just send word out to somebody that was way across at the other end of the reserve and saying for them to come see her, and they'd come. And she was just a powerful woman. I didn't like the Christian woman in her. She was a cruel, cruel, cruel woman when she presented Christianity to us. But I loved the medicine woman. She was a very gentle woman, and people from all over the world came to her for healing. And I stated in that, what's called, she died victoriously. She's my hero. Today, she's my hero. When she was alive, I had a love-hate relationship with her. Today, I have a love understanding of who she was and what she went through. She struggled pretty much her whole life in honoring her traditional teachings and respecting religion. She used to have all different churches ministers come to our home. We had the born again Christians who were the scariest ones that came and preached to us. And she used to make us go to service every night, 7 o'clock at night. And sometimes we didn't get home till 1 in the morning. And then we'd have to be up at 6 to do our chores before we went to school. She had the Jehovah's Witnesses, the Roman Catholic, the Mormon. They were the most fun. They preached their belief to us, but they also had fun with us. A lot of them became like family members with us. And then there was the Anglican Church. And she named all us children. There was, mom and dad had 10 together, and mom had 2 previously, actually 3 previously, and then she lost 1 with dad. So she had 14 kids altogether. But sometimes there'd be more than 1 minister at our house. And this one day in particular, I remember she was a very wise woman. My mom was feeding 4 of the ministers that were there. And that was my mom's, what's called, thing. She she fed whoever came into our home. And so these ministers were sitting at the table eating. Of course, us kids weren't allowed to. And they were talking and enjoying themselves. And then the Anglican minister, oh, that's mine probably. The Anglican minister showed up, and he was, I don't know what that is. He was First Nations. So keep that in mind in his teachings. You're just gonna have to put up with that. Hold on a minute. That was an alarm on my grandson's tablet. But anyway, they were all eating, and this Reverend Cuthand came in. And he started yelling at my great-grandmother, telling her that all us children were going to go to hell. We're going to burn in hell because she was teaching us the wrong God. So then all these 5 ministers were yelling and screaming at each other. And my great-grandmother, I'm going to refer to her as the old lady because that's what we call her. The old lady just calmly sat there, and she says, finally she says to them, okay, you guys, there's a tent down the hill. We always had a tent down the hill for any people that showed up at our home. They could sleep there. There's a tent down the hill, she told them. You go and you discuss which God is the right God. And you come back and tell me which one is the right one, and that is the one I will raise these children in. Needless to say, they never came back. So we continued to receive Christian teaching from all those 5 religions. So that was my great-grandmother, the old lady. Second generation was my grandmother, her daughter, Gwen. My Kokum, I just called her. She never talked about her experience at residential school. Her and her mother never had a good relationship. I remember one time she came to visit, and they ended up fighting, yelling and screaming at each other. And my Kokum told them, the old lady, when she died, she wouldn't even cry. She would just spit on her. That's how horrible the relationship was. And when the old lady died, my Kokum didn't cry, but I don't think she spit it on her, but she didn't cry anyway. And she never talked about her experience at residential school. Apparently she did with other people. And I've heard from relatives some of the horrible things she had experienced, but she never personally shared that. Next generation was my dad. My dad was the gentlest man I ever knew. He was my dad. He had the gift of making all his children feel they were his special one. And he had an unconditional love. He was a very quiet spoken man, very seldom spoke his language. So I think the only time he ever spoke his language was when he was drunk. My dad was a weekend drinker. And when he'd drink, he was a horrible, vicious, violent man. He never spoke about his experiences at residential school. But the anger and the hurt and the pain that he had experienced at residential school came out when he drank, and my mother got the brunt of it. My dad was my hero. He was my hero. And my mother also attended residential school. My dad and my Kokum attended George Gordon First Nation. And the old lady attended Bertle School in Manitoba. My mother attended St. Philip's in Kamsack area. My mother was a very gentle, loving, most generous woman I ever knew. But she was a very, timid, very timid. Hardly ever spoke. She just did. When she was young, both her parents died. She came from the Kamsack area. And her auntie and her uncle, Mushroom Pete and Kokum Sarah raised her after her parents died. And she ended up in the residential school. And when she wasn't in the school, when they let them go for the summer or whatever, she stayed with Mushroom and Kokum until she was 16. And they told her they couldn't keep her anymore. So she wrote a letter to the old lady and asked if she could go live with her. So the old lady told her, yeah, you can come live with me, but you will work for your keep. So my mother basically became that old lady's slave. From the time she was 16 till the old lady died when she was 87. I forget how old mom was at the time, but she was that old lady slave. She'd be up at 4 a.m. making breakfast for dad to go to work with the farmers for him to get to work by 5. And then she'd get us kids up and get us doing our chores and ready for school and just, she used to make 20 loaves of bread, 20 bannocks a day, do canning. She worked throughout the day, never rested. And you know, I used to always think we weren't going to have supper, but mother always puts something on the table for supper for us. We always had something to eat. And we as kids thought we had nothing, but she had the knack of putting something on the table for us. When she got sick and with Alzheimer's, one of my sisters looked after her and ended up getting her into respite at a nursing home. And then it got to the point where my sister couldn't look after her anymore. And we met with the nursing staff at the nursing home to discuss what we could do for her and what they could do with her. And they asked us to share a bit about our mom. So mom sat there the whole time with her head down, not a word, never said a word, just sat there and listened to everybody. And my my older sister Olga, shared with the people that about my mother being a slave to the old lady and how cruel the old lady and my dad were to her. And as soon as she said that, my mom's head flew up. She was sitting beside me. Her head flew up and she said to my sister, "Here, don't talk about them like that." And my sister Olga said to her, "Why not? It's the truth." And my mother's simple words were, "Because I love them." My mom had a big heart. No matter what hardship she lived through her life with with the old lady and my dad, she loved them. and she forgave them. They were both gone by that time. My mom lived her whole life being told what to do. Never had a choice. Never given the freedom to make a decision for herself. My mom was a powerful, powerful woman, but never given that chance to be powerful. She had a powerful love that she displayed to her children. She could never say, I love you, and she could never accept being hugged. And that was from the residential school because she was never shown that at the residential school. You know, or when I'd go to hug her, it felt like I was hugging a rock. And when I'd tell her, I love you, Mom, she'd always tell me too. It's all she'd say. She lived with that old lady until that old lady died, from the time Mom was 16. And she put up with that old lady's cruelty towards her and to her children. We weren't allowed to call my mom mommy or mother or mom. We had to call her Mary, and we had to call the old lady Mom. Until my oldest brother, her firstborn, Mom's firstborn, came and lived with us for a while. And he called Mom Mom, and the old lady told him, that's not your mother, I'm your mother. And he argued with the old lady. And after that, the rest of us kids start calling her Mom. The only time I ever saw my mother stand up to anybody was, I was 15 when I had my oldest daughter. I stayed in a unwed mother's home, and I had a social worker. And while I was there, all the other girls got assistance, money, spending money and whatever. And all I ever got was that worker coming asking me, telling me to sign these forms to give my baby up for adoption. And I'd tell her no, and finally wrote my mom a letter and told her about it. And the day I had my baby, Mom came to the hospital, got to the hospital. And a different worker came in the room and told us that my worker had told her that I was going to give my baby up. Well, my mom just flipped out. That's the first time I ever saw my mother flip out. And told that woman to get the hell out of the room, and that we were not giving the baby up, that we were taking the baby home with us. Well, that woman left, and she came back 2 hours later with a bunch of brand new stuff for baby. So my mom bought for her granddaughter. I was the 4th generation, but I'll come back to me after. 5th generation were my daughters, Mary Lynn, my oldest, and Rose. My Mary Lynn passed away on February 8, 2021. She demanded her dad to put her in a residential school because we were separated. And when I left him, I took the kids and I had them for 2 years, and we were fighting in court for custody of them. And I, at that time, I was pretty much like my mother. I had no power, no, I don't know what. I just didn't have the energy or the know-how to fight for my children. So rather than have them separated, I just let them go live with their dad. So Mary Lynn pretty much became the little mother to her siblings, living with her dad. And then she demanded to go to the residential school. And my girl took everything she could from that experience. She was the top student in the school. She was a smart, smart girl. Very, very, very brilliant. She used to always tell me, Mom, I have so much useless information. But she used a lot of that useless information in her life. And she always told her nieces and nephews, don't worry about having a boyfriend or a girlfriend or trying to shack up. Get your education first, travel the world, then get into a relationship. Two of her niece, her oldest nephew and her oldest niece both graduated, and a third one will be graduating. Three of them might be graduating next year. So they heeded their auntie. And she was the scary auntie of my grandchildren. They didn't so much as fear her, but they respected her. She didn't put up with nonsense for many of them, but she also gave them a lot of love, and she taught them a lot. She met her husband in 2002, I think it was, online in June of that year. He came down in August. They got married, and she moved to the States, to South Carolina, with him in May the following year, after she got everything settled here to go be with him. They had a son, and when she left for the States, she was mad at me because she had had a painting done of herself, a big 6-foot painting, and I went and pawned it, and so I could send her sister and her sister's kids to the exhibition that year, Mary Linda. And so she was really angry with me, and when I'd phone her, she wouldn't talk to me. But her husband Dave would talk to me. And I guess the first time I phoned and Dave talked to me after he got off the phone, he was expressing anger at me and telling her he didn't want to talk to me anymore. And she just told him, you know what? My mom's relationship is our relationship. My mom hasn't done anything to you. So you just quit hating on her and let me get over my anger in my own time. I'll eventually talk to her. And she did eventually. Dave died when Joseph wasn't quite 2 years, a week from being 2 when his dad died in 2010. So my daughter Rose and I drove up there to South Carolina to help her bury Dave, but she didn't bury him. She had a funeral and she brought his ashes home. And then the middle of July, she flew home with Joseph, and I kept him for 2 weeks when she went back to get all her stuff there, and she moved home in 2010. And immediately she started volunteering at the radio station here on the reserve. And I think it was the next year she was hired on as casual, and then she became full-time. Then she became assistant manager, and she was the manager of the radio station for probably 5 or 6 years before she died. And that place was about ready to close down when she took over, and she brought it back to life, and it was her life. I hate that radio station. I can't even listen to it today. It took so much of my daughter's life. But she left a mark on in the world. You know, she no matter how much she struggled with depression and so much in her life, she looked after her sisters. She paid rent for Rose in Saskatoon. She paid rent for Cece in Regina, her two younger sisters. She helped them out. And she was my earth angel. That's what I call her, my earth angel. I called her that before she passed away because she looked after Mom. She was my rock. And I'm learning to take care of myself now, you know. I'm having to learn to take care of myself. She always told me, Mommy, you'll never be without a home. You'll never go in a home. Rose is always telling me, so put me in a home. But Mary was always, she actually in 2012 had just moved in with her dad to take care of him. And a week after she moved in with him, he died. So she stayed on in their childhood home, which is where I am now. This is their childhood home. He got this house a year after I left him. It's a little over 38 years or something. So that was my Marilyn. Rose pretty much lived in the shadow of her sister. Marilyn Hershey always went for counseling. She was in counseling for 27 years before she died. Rose is like her father, doesn't believe in counseling, won't have anything to do with it. Rose carries everything inside of her and depended on her sister. I pretty much believe she lived in her sister's shadow. But after Marilyn passed away, I've noticed she's becoming outspoken and becoming stronger in her own right because she didn't have to do anything. Her sister did everything for her. Same with Cece. She relied a lot on her sister, and but I noticed they're starting to become strong within themselves. I was born in the Lestock Hospital. A lot of my siblings were born at home before we actually moved to George Gordon. We lived along the tracks of the town here, 7 miles from us, Panichai. We were called road allowance people. We lived there because when Papa was a young man, he went to war. And when our people went to the war, Papa was in the First World War, they had to give up their rights, their treaty rights. They were no longer considered First Nations, Indian, whatever you want to call them. I call us the first people of this continent. And so Papa lost his treaty rights. And so the old lady couldn't live on the reserve because she didn't have her treaty rights. So we lived in a little mud shack just outside of Panichai. And that's where we were living when I was born. I think about 4 of my siblings were born at home. The old lady delivered them, but I was born in Lestock Hospital. And then I remember when we moved to the reserve, the first year of school, grade 1, I went to Panichai from that mud shack. And when we went to school, we couldn't speak English. We spoke Cree and Soto mixed together. We couldn't understand English, we couldn't speak it. And one of my sisters, my sister Pat, who the old lady had trained to be a medicine woman, and she is a medicine woman today. When that first day she went to school, she went a year before I did, or a couple of years before I did. But when she first went to school, a teacher had locked her in a closet in the classroom because she was speaking her language. And that teacher had phoned the police to report my sister for speaking her language. And the policeman that came to the school knew my family, knew knew the old lady, knew my mom and dad. And rather than take her to the residential school, which was the policy back then, if our people spoke our language in the white school, then we were thrown in residential school. But rather than take Pat to the residential school, he took her home. And Pat still lives and talks about that experience and how terrified she was. So then the following year, we were on the reserve. By then, the old lady had gotten her treaty rights. And my mom and dad got their right. My dad anyway. My mom already had hers from her community in Kamsat, and dad got his treaty rights back. So we moved to Gordon's, where Papa was originally from. So the following year, and we always had, what do you call them? We called him the farm instructor, Indian agent, always came and saw us at that shack, just out of Punachai. They still had control over us, even though we didn't live on reserve. And I remember many times my older siblings hauling us younger ones into the bush to hide. The old lady always had one or two of the older kids as lookout to watch for the Indian agent and warn us when they were coming. He was coming, and we had to go hide in the bush until he left. And the old lady had to answer to him as to where we all were. But he never got us at that time. Then we moved to the reserve. And we had lived way in the bush at first, and then the old lady got a new house, and it just happened to be right across the lake from the residential school. And before the school term started that following year, the Indian agent told my mother she had to take us to the residential school. So I was 7. And I remember that day just like today. I remember we were all bathed up and given all new clothes to dress up to go. And we cut through the back of our house through a path that went around the lake. And on the way there was a nice raspberry bush, beautiful bush. I was excited and I was scared at the same time. So I crawled in that bush and I was laying in there eating raspberries, and I could hear everybody's hollering, "Where's Deb? Where's Debbie?" And finally, one of my sisters crawled in and come and got me out, and we continued our journey to the residential school. And can you imagine having to walk your children to this place and leave them? Imagine my mother walking home without her children. So anyway, that first day of, we were all brought down to this one room, big room in the basement of the school, and it was later referred to as the playroom, which, by the way, we never ever did get to play in it. But anyway, all us kids, a bunch of us girls were on, they had the one side for the boys and one side for the girls. And I was playing around, and I happened to bang into another girl, a much smaller girl than me. And she bawled her head off and what have you. And I was sent up to the dorm, which was on the 3rd floor of the school. And Miss Skeleton, I'm naming the people in the school. When I did my story with the adjudicator for the settlement, I was told that I couldn't name them. But I'm saying to hell with them today, I'm naming them. Miss Skeleton was the worst, meanest, cruelest woman there. But she made me go sit upstairs on one of the beds, and she told me that I wouldn't get supper for hurting this other girl, and that I had to sit and wait for my punishment till they sorted out all the kids and got them in their dorms. So I was 7. My oldest sister at that, my sister Josephine hadn't come into our life yet at that time, but the oldest one present was my sister Olga. She was 12. She was 5 years older than me. So I was sat on that bed all afternoon waiting, wondering what punishment I was going to get. But supper time, apparently my sister Olga confronted Miss Skeleton as to why I wasn't being fed and why I was having to sit and wait for punishment. And she ended up beating up Miss Skeleton. So I got fed and I didn't get no punishment. Punishment, I think, was enough just sitting there worrying about what the hell the punishment was being, excuse my language. But that very first night was a night of horror. I'm sleeping, and all of a sudden this man comes, takes down my pants, and he sticks his hand up me, and he's pinching my nipples, and I'm crying, and Mr. Bishop. And the night watchman came, Mr. B, we called him, he was Mr. Bradashevsky, and asked Bishop, what's going on here? And Bishop told him, she's having a stomachache. By then he's rubbing my tummy like I have a sore stomach. And I'm still crying. And, you know, question wasn't even asked, was, why are you on the girls' side? You're the boys' supervisor. Nothing was ever said. What I learned from that incident, how wrong they are or what wrong they've done. And that still stands today, especially when there's something done towards my people. When I was 9 years old, the old lady had a friend, one of the boy supervisors there, Mr. Fritzler. And he convinced her to allow him to take myself and my younger brother, who was 8, to Regina for a movie. And she allowed it. So he took us on a bus to Regina, got a hotel room. We were there before the movie was supposed to start. He didn't feed us supper. He bought chips and pop and told us to watch a movie, and he went out. We fell asleep watching a movie. And I woke up to him fondling me. And he raped me, horribly raped me in that room. My little brother tried to help me. And he tied my brother up and threw him in the bathroom and continued to do horrible things to me. When he was done, he threw me in the bathtub full of blood with my brother and threw a sheet at us. So I untied my brother and And we just laid in that tub and cried and held each other. And my brother cried, I'm sorry, I couldn't help you, you know. We fell asleep like that. Pritzker got up in the morning and come in the bathroom and told us, get your dirty little bodies cleaned up and get ready. You're going home. So we cleaned up as best as we could and got dressed, and he took us to the bus depot downtown Regina and left us there. And I know God was with us that day because I told my dad to let him know that she was bringing us home on the bus. So him and Uncle Clarence come and pick us up at the bus depot in Raymore. And we never said anything. But a few days later, Pritzker came and visited the old lady. And he told her that we were stubborn, we wouldn't listen to him, and we were disrespectful. So we had to go out and get a willow. That was how we did our own willows to be with. And that was her form of punishment for all us kids whenever God did something wrong. So we had to go get willows. And we both got a whipping. What I learned from that incident was a white man's word is gonna always be believed over a First Nations person, even by their own people, sometimes, most times. When I was 12, I was allowed to take a babysitting course. A lot of us took that babysitting course so that we could go and babysit for the supervisors and earn ourselves a little money. The first night, Mr. Burnley asked, once we got our certificates, Mr. Burnley asked for me to go babysit. And I was excited, I'm gonna make some money. So I went, and his wife, I think her name was Beth, she was a drunk. She went to town every night and drank. So I was pretty much, that first night I had to feed the kids or bath them and get them ready. They were already fed, but I had to bath them and get them ready for bed and put to bed. And so I did that. And I'm sitting on a couch watching TV. Kids are all in bed sleeping. And Brittany comes home. And he brutally raped me. You know, when my mind wants to forget what happens, my body remembers. Still to this day, my body remembers what happened with those men. I feel empty in my womb. I feel like my womb had been ripped out both by Fritzler and Brinley. I feel their hands up my private parts all the time. And I always think there's something wrong with me there, you know. I'm surprised I had kids. But he brutally raped me. And I don't think I even got paid any time I ever babysat for him. But because that wasn't the first time I babysat, many times after, and he raped me every time I babysat for him. And when I tell the supervisors I don't want to go babysit anymore, they made me go babysit. And that first night, I went back to school. I was telling Jeff, I do not like the ringing of the bells. And it's because that freaking church bell rang so many times for us. They controlled us. It rang at 6 o'clock in the morning to get us up, to get our chores done and get ready for school. It rang at noon for us to quickly eat our lunch and go to church. We had to go to church in the morning too by 7. We had to be in the church by 7. We had to go to church at noon. It rang at 6 o'clock in the evening for us to be in church by 7 in the evening. It rang at about 8 or 9, I think it was 8, for us to be in bed. And we could not get out of bed at all, even to go to the bathroom through the night. We had to stay in bed till that bell rang at 6 in the morning. So, you know, all you churches can just stick your bells, is what I think anyway. But anyway, I went back to the school, and it was well after that last bell rang for us to be in bed. But I snuck in a bathroom, and I ran the hottest bath I could. And I got in that tub and I scrubbed myself. My skin was just red, and I couldn't get clean. I couldn't get clean, you know. And again, God was with me that night, because I wanted to just peel the skin back and wash the dirt of who I was away. And I couldn't. When he raped me, I'd lay there and just pray to my mother's God, because I didn't have an understanding of God. I just say, Mama's God, please help me, please help me. And he took me for walks. He took me for walks as this man did what he would to my body. When I'm sitting in that tub and thinking of just doing that, or cutting myself and washing away myself of who I am, he told me, there's no point in you telling anybody, because nobody's going to believe you. You're just a dirty Indian. And I lived with that belief of myself until about, until I think I was about 47, 48, maybe later, in my 50s. I lived with that idea of who I was. I was just a dirty little Indian. Nobody was going to believe me. And I know God was with me that night, because there was no sharp instrument I could use to cut myself, to clean out the filth. Everybody at the school knew it was going on, the supervisors, the kids, because they all called me Brinley's baby, even the supervisors. He would tell me to meet him someplace during the day, quite often the bathroom off the chapel, which was in the administration area of the school. And I had to go from the girls' side into the administration. There was a door, and every time I'd go, and I had to go because he was my elder and he was telling me what I have to do, you know. I'd go and I'd go to grab the handle, and fear would just wash right through me that somebody was going to grab me by the scruff of the neck and tell me you're doing wrong. And I still live with that sometimes today. I still live with that when I think I'm doing wrong, when I'm not doing the work I needed today in my ministry. I still feel that hand grabbing me and telling me I'm doing wrong, you know. And he used to tell me to come to canteen and he'd give me candies there and abuse me. And what I learned from that experience with Bernie was a white man can do anything to First Nations and go on to live a prosperous life and not have to face the consequences. And they still do. They still do. Nothing's changed. And that's just in my lifetime. The old lady lived with that through her whole life. I left the school when I was 14. The summer I was 14, I met my first husband. He was 24 years older than I was. I was 14, he was 39. And that was all I knew, was old men that used my body. And I got pregnant with Marilyn. And I had gone home because I was here on this reserve, spending the summer with my aunt and uncle when I met him. My aunt was my dad's sister, younger sister, and spent the summer with them. And I met my first husband, and then I went home and found out I was pregnant. He come and found us when Mary was about a year old. By then, she was living with my sister and her husband. She was my sister's first baby. So my sister really took it hard when she passed away too. So I was 16 when her dad come and found us and brought us back to this community. And we lived together, and I went on to have Rose and Joseph and Ed. And in 1982, we got married. And I didn't want to get married. I just married from pressure from the community and our friends. And I always wondered why he treated me like such a child, you know. Well, I was just a child. And I married him in April of 82, and I left him in 10 months later in 83. And that whole time I had no voice. There was no way I could sit here and share what I'm sharing today. I walked with my head down in shame, and you couldn't hear me speak. I had no voice. My voice was more like a whisper when I did speak. My sister Olga at that time was sober, I think, 2 years. She lived in the city. And I put up a lot with my 4 older kids' dad. And he's a very jealous man. He'd come home and look under the fridge of all places for the man I'm supposed to have there. And I just lived under his thumb. And what made me leave was he held me down one day and had my children stab me with pencils. And when I'd cry, he'd tell them that I was just a big baby. And then he went left. And something just popped in my brain. A light came on, and I realized I can't live like this. I can't allow my children to know that another person can treat another person the way he treated me. the cruelty he did to me. And I called my sisters. They all lived in Regina, and they come and got me. Two of them, Nettie and Pat, come and got me. And he hid our kids in chicken coop at his dad's yard, and we lived just across the field in a trailer from his dad's house. And Mo, Pat and Mo, my youngest sister, came. She was a fighter, and Mo managed to get the three of them. The only one she couldn't get a hold of was my oldest son, Joseph. His dad got a hold of him and hung on to him. And our friend Lawrence was there at the time, and his brother Frank. And they talked like nothing was going on, you know. We just kept talking, and I'm trying to convince him to let me take Joseph. And he's hanging on to him, and he has an axe, a hatchet in his hand. And there was no way I was going to turn my back on him with a hatchet in his hand. So Lawrence very quietly reached over and took the hatchet from him and told him, "You need to let her go." As soon as he got the hatchet out of his hand, and I got Joseph in my arms, I left and got in the car with the kids. I left with a couple of bags of clothes for my kids, and that was it. Oh, actually, there was just 2 boys home. The girls were in school. So we got to Balcarres and picked the girls up at school. And when I got in the car and I had all 4 kids in the car, I cried. I just cried with so much relief. I cried pretty much all the way to the city. And when I got there, I stayed with Sister Pat with my kids and her kids, and then Olga started taking me to AA meetings, and I sat in those tables for a couple of years, didn't talk. And when I finally did start talking, all I could do was cry. All I could do was cry. I couldn't even describe what I was feeling. I didn't know the difference between anger and happy and hurt and not hurt. I didn't know anything. And when I finally started talking, all I talked about was what a horrible life was. My life was as a result of other people's drinking in my life. And then somebody suggested, a good friend of mine suggested I go to Al-Anon. So I phoned Al-Anon, and my sister Donna, who became my sister, picked me up and took me to my first Al-Anon meeting. And it happened to be a speaker meeting. And funny thing is, I related with the alcoholic then more than I did with the Al-Anon person. So I stayed in Al-Anon for 4 years, and those women, Donna and Susan and Terry and Marge, they just loved me. They just loved me, and they taught me how to love myself and to accept myself, because I hated myself. I despised who I was, what I was. I was a First Nations woman that was nothing. And those women just loved me and taught me how to love myself and taught me how to look at how my life was and what part I played in it. In 1987, I went to AA for the first time, January 24th. For the first time for myself. Because I didn't think I was an alcoholic. I didn't think I had a problem with drinking. because a lot of times when my sister spoke at meetings, she always talked about how she admired me that I could sit with one bottle of beer. And I really had to look at that, like, and be honest with myself. The reason I sat with one bottle of beer was because I was too scared to take that first drink because I didn't know when to quit. I didn't know if I could quit. I've been sober 31 years, or whatever 87 is, 33 years. And no matter how horrible my life has been since I quit drinking, I have not had to pick up another drink because I gave it over to God. I gave that desire for the drink over to God, and He took it. In 1988, I met Reverend Charlie Fox of the Lutheran Church, and I was just nobody walking home one day, and I saw his little sign in his window in that house he had his little community in, his church. And I walked in, and he welcomed me. And the thing he did for me, is my goal in my ministry today. He welcomed me, and he encouraged me and inspired me and brought out my qualities, my abilities that I never knew I had. We moved into a bigger house, the ministry. It was called Circle of Life Native Ministry with Lutheran Church. I worked with him from 88 until 90, I think. And while I was there, he sent me to, he told me, you should go train for ministry. So I went. I went to Dr. Jesse Soto Center at that time. It's now called Sandy Soto Spiritual Center at Beausejour. But at that time, when it was Dr. Jesse Soto Center, we kind of just roamed all over the country for our training because we didn't have the center at that time. And in 88, I went to Alberta, Saddle Lake, Alberta, where the All Native Circle Conference first became a conference. I was a part of that. And then I think it was in 90, I decided I'm not, actually I just trained 88 and 89 year for ministry. And I did my first year discernment, and I discerned I'm not minister material, especially with my lifestyle. I love my men. But anyway, I quit ministry, but I continued on with Sandy, with All Native Circle Conference, and attended their the conference every year that they had it. And I became a part of the different committees that they had. I was on their the Council of Sharon, a member of that for many years. And I went on to become a bank teller, trained. And the first paycheck I received from that, by then I had my children back with me. My youngest son, Ed, had problems at school. He set a fire in the garbage bin. They were still with their dad at that time. And the chief here, Chief Marianne Daywalker, who was chief for this reserve for 39 years, called me and asked me if I would come out for a meeting with their dad and chief and the council and the principal and one of the teachers. She paid for bus fare for me to come out and put me up someplace to stay for the night for the meeting the next day. Their dad didn't know I was going to be there. So he was pretty much shocked when I walked in. And we sat and we listened to what the principal and teacher had to say. course, Himi pipes up, oh, you're just being racist. And I said to him, it has nothing to do with racist. Our son needs help. And Marianne, the chief, said to me, you guys said to us, you guys go in my office and you talk. So we went in the office and she no sooner closed her door, and I said to him, I'm taking my kids home. So I took them home with me to Regina, where I was living. And I had to learn to be a mom again. By that time, being a mother, I didn't know myself how to love them. I basically just did what had to be done as a mother. Provided the food for them, cooked for them, washed their laundry. I didn't know how to cuddle them. I didn't know how to tell them I loved them. I had to learn that. And when I first got my first paycheck after taking my bank teller program, I was always on welfare at that time. And I got my first paycheck that first morning, and my youngest son, he was probably about 7 or 8. He was sitting on the couch and he says, Mom, it feels different. And I said, what? He says, it's not welfare, it's your paycheck. Both my sons have never been on welfare. They have both worked from the time they were 15 years old when I lived in Winnipeg with them. They got jobs at a window factory, both of them, and they worked, and they have never been on welfare. Rose is the only one that still lives on welfare. Mary refused welfare. She always stated that it was just a temporary thing that was supposed to help people get on their feet. My whole family, my sister, that's 11 months older than me, has lived her entire life on welfare. Very dependent. And that's what we were made that. Our people were made to be dependent on the government, on welfare. I'm proud to say I'm not on welfare. I haven't been since I started working at the bank back in 90. No, before that. No, about 90. But anyway, then in 2012, my late sister Jo, my oldest sister, she was my best friend, my sister. She was my everything. When I first met her when I was in grade 1, she was in grade 6 in Punitry. I remember Halloween time going from class to class, all dressed up with all the other kids, showing off our costumes. And I remember seeing her sitting in her desk with a big, beautiful smile and pride looking at me. And I thought, that's my sister. That's my big sister. She was my everything. But in April of 2012, she phoned me. By then I was working as a welfare administrator for the band here, where I live now in Okonees with my daughter Rose. But she phoned me and asked me if I would come and live with her and take care of her, because she had diabetes bad. She only had one leg. And I couldn't make a decision. I told her, I can't quit my job. I got too many bills. And she assured me she would pay my bills for me. And I couldn't make a decision. And from that day on, I had a headache like you wouldn't believe. Every day, a headache, throbbing headache. And then in mid-July, she landed in the hospital. She phoned me crying. Well, I knew there was something wrong. Always knew something was wrong with her. And she phoned me and I said, and As soon as she said hello, I knew there was something wrong. And I asked her, what's wrong? And she said, I fell out of bed and I'm home alone. There's Tanisha and one of the other grandkids, her grandchildren were home with her, who are actually her great grandchildren, but they were just small, like 7 and 8, something like 6 and 8 or something like that. And her son was there, but he was drunk. So I phoned my sisters and I couldn't get a hold of them. So I put on Facebook, somebody go check on Joe. She fell off the bed. She can't get up. So her granddaughter went over, and my sister and my niece, my granddaughter and her boyfriend went over, and my sister and my niece and somebody else went to check on her and found her in a puddle of pee that she had peed herself. She couldn't get up, and they got her up off and put her on the bed and got her cleaned up, and she wouldn't go to the hospital until Danny came home, her grandson, who is the father of these great grandchildren of hers. And the reason she wouldn't go to the hospital was because she had her 2 great grandchildren with her and her drunk son. She couldn't leave them with her drunk son because welfare would come and take them. That was her fear, that welfare would come and take her grandchildren. They couldn't convince her to go to the hospital until Danny got home from school, from work, or whatever he was doing at the time. But they finally got her into the hospital. And I went up to, that was a Wednesday, and I couldn't go to the city till Friday. So I went and I saw her, and they said they had to take her other leg, and she had to make a decision. And but that was a couple of days later. I was at York, and when she phoned me and she told me that she had to make a decision of to whether she was going to allow them to operate on her leg or take it off. And she didn't want to make this decision without me. And she had phoned at midnight, but my phone was off, and I didn't get the message till about 6 in the morning. And I got up right away, and I drove all the way to Regina and got to the hospital. And the doctor came in and talked with us. And she, before the doctor came, she talked to me and said, I'm just going to let him take my leg, sister. And I said, okay, that's what you want. And the doctor came, and he was trying to convince her to have an operation. And I said, she already told you she wants her leg taken. How would you like to drag a useless leg around? So the next day they were supposed to operate on her. They starved her, and they didn't till the next morning. And I didn't get to the hospital the next morning. So I took time off from work to be with her at the hospital, and they took her leg off. She was in the hospital for a while, and then she went home, and I'd go in on weekends and take care of her, make sure she got her diabetic medicine, make sure she got fed. And one day I was sitting at my office in mid-August, and I'm still having these headaches. And I was sitting at my desk, and I had a bunch of papers around me, and I was looking at a piece of paper and what work I was doing. And finally, I just dropped the paper and I said, okay, God, do with me what you will. Do with my life what you will. And I decided, I got the message I needed to go live with my sister. So I wrote my resignation letter, and I had to put it in the DO's mailbox and the 4 counselors and the chief's mailbox. And as I put the last letter in the last mailbox, that headache just left me. And I haven't had it since. And I moved in with my sister on September 14th to take care of her. And by then I start feeling my own call for ministry. felt this tug. And I knew it was God saying, I need you to do what I need you to do, sort of thing. You know, I knew I was being called for ministry. And my sister had trained with the Lutheran Church herself for ministry. One day I was sitting on her bed or she was sitting on my bed and I was changing her bed and stuff. And I sat down and I said to her, "Sister, I'm feeling this call to go to ministry. I'm feeling God calling me to go to ministry." And she sat there with tears rolling down her face and she said to me, "As scary as it is to have you gone for 2 weeks at a time for training, you need to answer that call." So I got a hold of Reverend Betty Lou Scogan, who worked out at this community at the time, and I asked her how to get into Sandy Silver Spiritual Center. So we worked on that process. My sister died October 5th. And I didn't hate God. I felt relief for her because she lived through so much herself in her life. She was a residential school student too. And today I believe God used her as an instrument to get me where I am today. I started training in January 2013. I graduated April 2017. I finished a year early. It was supposed to be, it's a 5-year program, but I finished it in 4. And by then I was working here as a student minister. And then in 2017, the Plains Presbytery interviewed me, and all First Nations people. And then I got a call from one of them and said, can you meet me at Houston's? I need to go over this letter with you. By then the one minister met me the week before and had me meet her at a restaurant, and she had her family was there, and she told me that they said no to my ordination. And I said, "Well, who said no?" She said, "I don't know. They're at the office. Give them a call." So I called him the next day. And I fought for my ordination. So then a week later, that other lady phoned me and asked me to meet her, another minister phoned me and asked me to meet her at a restaurant so she could go over the letter. It was a 5-page letter telling me why they weren't authorizing my ordination. She read that maybe a page and a half, and she put it down and she said to me, "Well, you're smart, you can figure out what it means. What it boils down to is you're too Indigenous, not enough Christian to be ordained." And in my training, we were trained to honor our traditional teachings. So I went into a depression, and like her words to me at that time, "You're too Indigenous, not enough Christians," was just like Brinley laying on me again and telling me, "You're just a dirty Indian." I ended up in the psych ward for a month. My Marilyn took me to see my doctor in town here, and she sent me to Regina to the psych ward because I wanted to kill myself. So I was in the psych ward for a month, and they kept a close watch on me because they were scared I was going to hurt myself. And after a month, they let me go, and I was still sick. I had so much hate in me for this woman that told me that. So much hate and anger for the Native ministry. Until one day I realized I can't carry this hate anymore. It's just keeping me sick. and I gave it over to God. But I still continued to fight for my ministry, and I was finally ordained on September 27th last year. And I work for the Regina Native Ministry. I've been working for them since 2016. I worked here from 2014 to 2016, and I started in Regina in 2016. And it's been a struggle. I've wanted to give up so many times, and I always feel God pulling me by the scruff of the neck saying, I'm not done with you. You're not done what I need you to do. You know, just recently I've had to revamp my ministry. You know, that ministry has been present in Regina for the past 50 years. And today, a lot of the non-native people in the churches in Regina don't know about it. 50 years we've been there, and them people don't know about us, a lot of them. But they do now. But when I first started and start connecting with the ministries there, a lot of them didn't know that it existed. Since I've been working for them, I work with my own money, work out of my car or my house, wherever I may be living. And but today I'm thankful that the churches there support me. That I'm very involved. My home church is Wesley United Church in Regina, and the people there are very supportive of me. I meet with them every Tuesday evening just for conversation, visit. That's our home community. I am pretty involved with Eastside, and they get a lot of support from them and the other ministries also. There's one minister won't even respond to me. Won't even respond to any of my emails. And you know why? Because in my mind, she's racist. She doesn't want to have anything to do with Native people. But that's her loss, not mine. Just recently, my board fell apart. My chairperson resigned, and I got a lady from Eastside and a young man from Wesley who joined with me and two of the board members last Thursday, and we had a meeting. Our goal is to get 5 non-native people and 5 native people, and have the non-native people mentor the native people on how to be a board. What God has put in my heart for my ministry is I need to do what I did with the Lutheran Church. A lot of people suggest I get space in a United Church in Regina for my ministry. My people are not going to go into any church. 2 of the board members are men who are older than me, will not go into church for meetings, so they haven't been attending meetings because we meet in the church. A lot of our people will not go in a church, and I don't blame them. I'm questioned today. Somebody had posted something about where do you put your Indian part of you when you're living in a white world? And I commented, I said, she's there with me. I was raised both in the Christian and the traditional way. And that's how my ministry is. When I do worship, it consists of a scripture and a traditional teaching. We light a candle, and I light a smudge. So, that's my story, folks. Thank you for listening. Ahau. Ahau means I'm done.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Deb. Appreciate so much you being willing to share your story with us. Maybe we can take just a few moments. If there is anyone that has, yeah, you can put your videos back on. If you have maybe a question for Reverend Deb, we might have time for a couple of them or so, or
Oh yeah, we still got time.
yeah.
Ole, it's already
Yeah.
5 to 7 here.
Yeah. So we're coming up on 5 to 9
It's
here.
almost you guys' bedtime.
Yeah, it's okay.
You know, when the stories of the children being found in the graves at the residential schools came out, probably for about 3 weeks, I couldn't even feel or think about it. More feel. I'd see the post and I just get sick and not even want to look at them. Until about 3 weeks ago, I was finally able to cry for those children because I had so much grief already within me. My body took it. My mind and my heart couldn't take in the news because I had grief from losing my daughter in February and my very dear brother-in-law, but I always called him brother, in May. And when the news came out, I just couldn't even look at it. But my body suffered the grief of it. I got physically sick and what have you. And yeah. So, any questions?
Yeah, any questions? You can unmute yourself, and because I might not be able to get along to all of you, but or to see if you have a hand raised, but you just unmute and ask away.
I'd just like to say thank you, Reverend Deb, for sharing your story. And I'm so sorry for what you went through in your life. And I feel, ashamed for how you were treated. And God bless you for what you're doing now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Linda.
Reverend Deb, I'd like to thank you very much for your sharing. And I'd like to say, God bless you and your ministry now and forever. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you. Was that you, Laverne?
No,
Marion.
No, it's Marion.
Okay. Oh, Marion. Okay. Okay.
but I would like to say, Deb, thank you for the courage that you have shown tonight, because you said at the beginning that you fight this battle every day and you don't get over it. And we saw that tonight. And it really touched me. And I just pray that God will give you the strength to continue with your ministry so that you can reach out and help others.
Thank you, Laverne. I start doing this sharing. I've shared with the region here, with the ministers in the region, and I've shared with a couple of other churches. And for me, it's a healing for me.
Yeah. I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's and also a way to help you understand the whole residential school area,
Mm-hmm.
and what actually happened to our people.
Yeah.
Today I can't speak my language. I don't know it. But when I was a young girl, after it was taken from me, I could understand my mother and my grandmother speak, because my mother was Soro, and the old lady was Swampy Cree, and they combined their language together when they spoke, and I understood it. So today I can't differentiate between the two languages. I don't know which is Soro and which is Cree most of the time. I know Tansy is Cree.
Mhm.
Jeff here. I remember someone saying on social media, follow Indigenous voices on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter. Don't let white people tell their story. And so that's been a huge thing for me. And someone said to me, how did you end up meeting Deb? And I said, I think she sent me a friend request. Ministers do that back and forth. I said, I was so honored and excited to be able to hear stories from people. And so I think that's one of the only ways that we're going to learn is if we allow, not even allow, because we don't have the right to allow or not, but it's to listen, jump into the conversations and listen to the conversations.
Yeah.
So thank you for
You know,
allowing me that
a
space
very
to
dear
jump in.
friend of mine, welcome, Jeff. A very dear friend of mine, Belinda Vandenbroek from Manitoba. She is she's very knowledgeable on colonization. She taught it, and since that rally, or whatever you want to call it, in that peace walk in Winnipeg for the children when they all wore orange shirts and stuff, she has determined that she is going to create change. She does a talk. She started last week, Monday, and I'm missing it right now, but I can watch it after. She when she first said she was going to do it, I asked her if she was going to live stream, and she didn't even think of it, but she did live stream, and she's going to live stream tonight. And she talks about our struggle, our people's struggle, and how there can be change, especially for our children. Her goal is to make a better world for our children. The government went from residential school to the 60 scoops. Today, our children are still being stolen from their parents. Babies are born to young women and they're just taken right out of their arms. Some don't even get to hold their babies. Social services takes them. Child and Family Services is what they're called here. Just take them from them and they never see them again. And Belinda's goal is to put a stop to that. To teach our people to decolonize ourselves and our thinking. She's a powerful speaker. I listened to her. She spoke, I think, for about 2 hours, or a little longer. And I listened to her 3 times that day. She first did it last Monday. And I'll listen to her tonight too after I'm done here. But you need to listen to her. That's one of my suggestions, is just listen to people like Belinda. Listen to people like myself. Learn. Be open to learn. Open your heart to learn who we are as a people. And the struggles we've had to face since Columbus got lost.
I would just like to say thank you.
Who is that?
My name's Cecile.
Oh, there she is, right
Okay,
here.
I see you.
Yeah.
You're welcome, Cecile.
Thank you so much. I learned a lot.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Hi, Deb. I'm
Hi,
Evelyn.
Evelyn.
And one of the huge learnings for me tonight is the realization of the power of words. And I will not refer to anyone as a residential school survivor anymore. So thank you for that. That was really powerful. And I'm going to be rethinking about bells.
Thank you.
Never crossed my mind.
No.
And yeah, so thank you for that. And the little story that you just told, I thought your mom, see, my mind is so totally lost all of a sudden, but you had just said someone wasn't speaking very loud, and I thought they needed your mom. Oh, in the home for unwed moms, that
Mhm.
those children that are having babies, they need your mom to go and
Yeah.
help. That-
Yeah. Yeah.
So very powerful evening. Thank you.
You're
Blessings.
welcome, Evelyn. You're welcome. Jeff, I'll send you the link for Belinda's talk last week
Please do. Yes.
through email,
Yes.
and I'll send you the link for her talk tonight. And I recommend you listen to her, you people. Like, she is powerful. She is very powerful. In that first talk she gave, somebody asked her, what do you feel, or what do you think about our people that are in churches and that follow Christianity or whatever? And I love her response. It was, to each their own. To each their own. You know, it really angered me when people were burning the churches after that. The first incident of finding the children. My thought was, geez, you're welcome, Brenda. They took our traditional teachings away from us. And a lot of our people turned to the church, and that's all they knew was their church. And you're going to take that away from them too? You know? I was raised to respect Christianity and to honor my traditions, and I will continue to do that. My great-grandmother taught us our traditional teachings, and in a very subtle manner. And she had to, because if she was caught teaching them to us, she would have ended up in jail. She would have been thrown in jail. And it was so subtle that I didn't even know I had them in me until 1986, I think it was. I took a life skills program because the powers that be in my life at the time thought I needed a life skills program to learn to speak and what have you. I have confidence in myself and what have you. And they had she wasn't even First Nation, she was Métis, but she knew the traditional teachings, and she was teaching them there in that course one day. And I'm sitting there like that, and at that time I didn't have no voice, and then she's speaking, I go, And back then I was still called Debbie, and she said, Debbie, you have something to share with the class? And I said, no. And she said, yes, you have something on your mind. Could you share it with me? And I said to her, I know that. I know all that. She was teaching the 7 grandfather teachings. And she said, and I didn't learn it from nobody standing at a board, writing it all down, telling me about it. And she said, well, where did you learn it? It was a part of my daily life growing up that my great-grandmother taught me. And those teachings were encouraged when I took my ministry training at Sandy Soda Spiritual Center. I actually put together a teaching program of the grandfather teachings in conjunction with scripture. And when I do my services, I do a scripture reading and a traditional teaching. I did my own blanket experience with my family story. I got that. When I first heard the blanket experience, I didn't like it. I hated it because once again, white people were telling our story. So I put together my own, and I've done that a few times with people, with different churches since then. I haven't done it for a while. But what I do from spirit. Spirit guides me. And when I pray, I say, Creator God. That's what we called our being. He was our creator. He was our great spirit, which is like my great grandmother believed and taught us. They were one in the same. There's no difference. And the Bible teachings is no different than our traditional teachings. No difference. Our teachings are love, respect, honor, truth, humility, not honor, love, respect, wisdom, humility, truth, and I forget the other two, courage, and I think the other one is honesty. Yeah, honesty. And you find all those in the Bible. Thank you, Pat. You're welcome. So if you want to really learn and understand our what's called, you'll thank you, Linda. You'll listen to Belinda. She's a very powerful speaker.
So Deb, my name's Stuart. I just wanted to.
Tandy, where are you? Tandy, McLean? Okay.
Yes.
McLean.
Yeah, it's Stuart. So
Okay.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. You mentioned a couple of times tonight that you had some very strong, very capable, very dynamic women in your life. And I just want to turn that table back to you and just say you're a very strong, very capable, very dynamic person. You could tell the courage in your story, your ability to share that story. And I think the people in your ministry are incredibly fortunate that God kept grabbing you by the back of the neck, kept telling you that you needed to continue moving forward. And I want to also, Jeff, thank you so much for sending the link out to this to our church. We're with St. Paul's United Church in Ajax, and our minister sent the link out to us, and I actually see some other folks from our church here tonight as well. And I just wanted to thank you how much, or let you know how much we appreciate being part of your story today.
Thank you. Thank you. And the people that walk with me in my ministry are all passed. My great grandmother, Mary Jane Anderson, my mother, Mary Pratt, and my sister Jo. They're continued every day. They walk with me in my ministry.
In your traditional way, Deb, of storytelling, in a traditional way, you speak from the heart and from the spirit most authentically, and that truly reaches reaches others. So thank you
You're
for
welcome.
sharing your gift, sharing your
You're welcome.
gifts.
You're welcome. You're welcome, Pat and Chris. I just read your, what's called, when I do services, sometimes I do pulpit supply for the different churches. That's how I am. I speak. I never, ever write a sermon. I just speak right from the heart. I tried once to write a sermon and I just totally got lost. Just totally got lost. So I don't even bother writing sermons. I just speak from the heart. Yeah.
Thank you.
How do you say thank you in your language?
Thank you. Pardon?
How do you say thank you in your, I heard you say thank you early on. You used different in your
Indigenous.
language.
Miigwech.
Miigwech?
Miigwech. Miigwech.
Okay.
Yeah.
Miigwech.
Cree Ojibwe, Cree Nation,
Yeah. Yeah.
Miigwech.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I don't know how to say you're welcome in it. Yeah.
Well, thank you, everyone, but especially thank you to you, Deb Miigwech.
When I friended you, Jeff, I was on a friending spree of all ministers. And you were referenced because
I'm glad you did.
I have to say I did because I really don't know much of the Bible. It's shame to say, but my late daughter, she knew the Bible inside out, and she taught me a lot about it. And she always referred to Jesus as her big brother.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. Nice. Well, thank you, everyone, for coming out this evening, and let this just be a ripple in the water of what we will be able to hear as far as Indigenous stories, and continuing to be open to learn. So,
Thank you, Bruce.
yeah.
Jeff,
Yes,
could I close with a song?
please do.
It's in my language. It's a song that I don't know if any of you have ever heard of Winston Watney. He's a First Nations performer. He gave me the song and gave me permission to use it. And what it says is, from where you're sitting up above, look down upon us and take care of us, Great Spirit. And I sing it 4 times to honor the 4 directions. Number 4 is very important to our people. We have 4 directions. We have the 4 colors. And the animals are very important to us. And, my spirit name, Reverend Wesley, I forget his name. He's an Anglican minister. He came to the school when I was training, and he gave us all spirit names. And I was the last one he gave my spirit name because he had a hard time. My spirit name is Warrior Woman Spirit. And I tried to get an elder to translate it into our language for me. And she told me that it couldn't be translated because it was too powerful. It put me above the Great Spirit. So my name is Warrior Woman Spirit. So I'll sing this song now. Not a very good singer. I always tell the people at my church, I can't sing worth a hoot, but this
Seems Reverend Deb has froze. Oh, we've lost her. Well, thank you, everyone, for coming out this evening.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff.
Yeah,
Very
we
much.
appreciate this. So I'll finish recording now. And as I mentioned, I will stick around if anyone needs to chat. So have a good
God bless
evening,
you, everyone.
everyone. Thanks very much.